I am an ex-KKK member, ask me anything. Before immediately disliking this post, let me clarify I am beyond ashamed of my past and would give up my life savings change it, but sadly what's done is done. I was born and raised into it and on my own decided to leave not long after I became 18 and got out in the world a little. I'm currently answering questions to 2 threads, so if I might have mixed up the threads for some of you. This post is getting a lot more attention than I thought it was gonna get. I'm gonna try to, but I can't promise I will get to every question at a fast time, but I will try my best to answer all questions as fast as possible. First off, I'm gonna warn you there's gonna be trolls in this thread. You've already encountered some, but be aware more will follow. And then my question is, in your personal experience, how much of hardcore racism do you think comes down to lack of exposure and understanding of other races? A lot of ex-Klan members say the thing that made them abandon their beliefs was really getting to know someone or multiple people of a different race personally. Maybe part of me just wants to believe that ignorance and lack of exposure are a big part of it and others can make the change you did by getting to know someone of another race. Maybe that is naive, but I want to believe others can change too. Klan members typically have never truly been around members of other races. Me personally, I left after getting to know someone of another race, which essentially made me question the KKK mindset. Of course, that being said, for most people it's difficult to abandon their childhood beliefs, so for some people it would be like arguing with a brick wall. Lack of exposure is the reason for 99% of racists. I commend you for doing this, ask me anything. You may not feel comfortable answering this, but where did you grow up? I live in Arkansas, and when I was young we moved to this small, new, white town. We got a flyer in our mailbox encouraging us to join the local KKK, but my parents shut that down with a quickness. I actually grew up in Utah, surprisingly. I know that's not the most stereotypical state for KKK members. My parents were Mormon and KKK members. They never told the other members that they were Mormon. A few questions if you don't mind. Were you a committed member of the KKK belief system, or was it something that just stuck to, because as you said you grew up in it? How and why did you leave this way of life? How would you describe your race and X now to what it was before? Are you doing okay? Do you still interact with members of the KKK, or have you cut yourself off from them completely? What would the person that you are now would say to the person you were when you were a member of the KKK? Did you ever get any tattoos, and did you remove them if you did? I wouldn't say I was committed. I would more argue that I just never really questioned it or thought otherwise. I left KKK not long after moving out of my parents' house. I was working at a movie theater and had a co-worker who I talked to. At first I was uncomfortable, but a few minutes into the conversation something clicked in me. I used to be religious and I technically left the KKK after becoming atheist, because the KKK doesn't like atheists. But my racist mindset still stuck. I truly abandoned that mindset after my conversation with someone of another race. Would you ever date someone of another race today? Or do you think that your learned prejudices may still remain little, even subconsciously, after leaving? I have, but I do think as far as who I'm attracted to, I prefer white women. Stereotypical, I know. I've heard that people in the KKK don't consider themselves racist. Is this true? Yes, it is. They claim that we aren't racist. We just don't think it's right for societies to have multiple races. Which is the dumbest freaking excuses I have ever heard. Do KKK members have any sympathy for the way they treat people? Or did they get a kick for being a part of it? Some don't and others do. Most KKK members, for example, would probably be upset if they saw a black child being tortured to death. How much could you even see through the mask, and was the weird costume comfortable? I do not. We had a conversation one time similar to that scene on Django Unchained. It was difficult to see through them, because they were sized wrong, and so it was difficult to line your eyes up with the holes. The conversation wasn't as exaggerated as it was in the movie, but there actually was a little bit of tension and anger. When I watched Django Unchained, I absolutely died laughing at that scene. Comfort wise, no, they aren't comfortable, but they aren't uncomfortable enough for you to notice for very long unless you're thinking about it. Nothing felt better than the day I left and burned that Motherfricker to ashes. What's your plan now? To accumulate wealth through investing in businesses so that one day I can help as many people as possible. What was the best thing about being a part of such a horrible group? I mean, basically, there must be something that people find in it or no one would be members anymore. Like why are people still in it, joining it, and how can society offer them that thing elsewhere? It is nice having a community that has your back at all times. People typically join it either because they were raised into it, the most common reason, or because they simply agree with the evil beliefs that the KKK has. Did you go to meetings? If so, what were they like? What did you do or discussed? Sometimes. Most of it was legal stuff. Protesting anti-discrimination laws, etc. In our meetings we typically were just discussing what we could do to slow it all down. I've read some of your responses and I was wondering if you left the Mormon church too. Yes, I did. Of course, Mormons, despite having a racist history, are usually ignorant of their church's history. Most Mormons typically aren't racist. My parents happened to be Mormons who happened to have been extremely racist. What does the KKK think of Islam? They hate it with a passion. Of course, most of them are too freaking stupid to realize Islam isn't a race. I'm not a fan of Islam myself, because the Quran has some pretty fricked up it in it. But I'm not hateful of Muslims in any way. Most Muslims are good people. The religion itself I don't like. KKK members don't like it because A. It's not Christian. B. Muslims are a hat is n not white. This is fascinating. Thanks for doing this. What does the KKK think of First Nations people? You call them Native Americans down there. They were here first. So according to KKK logic, should all of the white people in North America go back to Western Europe? They genuinely think that whites were here first. Most don't really know or care to learn the history about Native Americans being here first. What kind of rules did the KKK follow? That's a tough one to answer, because there's a lot of rules. Don't associate with other races unless it's absolutely essential. Don't date members of another race. Lots of stereotypical Christian rules that Christians follow. This is a difficult one to answer, because it did vary among KKK members, but the rules I stated were big ones that they all followed. I'll leave another response here if I think of more. Who do the KKK hate the most, blacks, Jews, or Muslims, and why do they hate Jews? They're white. Long story short, they hate Jews out of fear of being replaced. Due to bloodlines, they don't believe the Jews are white. They hate all races, but they typically showed the most hates towards African Americans, because they were scared of being replaced, and African Americans were the highest growing community to our knowledge. What was the reaction of the KKK members when they were obligated to receive help from a black person, like a medic, firefighter, etc.? I always had that doubt. They actually did acknowledge that if the interaction was essential, that it's okay to interact with a member of another race. You shouldn't feel too bad. What you were a part of is all you knew when you were younger, and there's no changing how your family chose to live, so it's not your fault. The only question I really have is, was it as brutal as I've been told? Like, did you ever see a murder or anything, or is that not how it really is? Nowadays the KKK doesn't typically murder blacks. At least not like the old days. There was one time when a member of the group tricked a black girl into dating him only so he could bring her there and have him and his friends beat her. His grandfather's exact words were, "Son, I like what you did, but that's not how we need to do things." You can get in big trouble for that. It's more all about protesting nowadays. Would you say most of the Klansmen you met genuinely believed they were superior, or that they just went along with because they were raised into that kind of life, or for some other reason? Thanks for this Ask Me Anything. That's a tough one. Their behavior clearly showed that they believed they were superior, but when talking about it, especially to non-Klansmen, they acted as if they viewed themselves as equals, and they simply think that a society is meant to have members of the same race living in it. Are you still in contact with your parents? Do you think it's possible to change their mindsets? How kind of things did the members tell you about other races? My mum kind of changed her mindset, but she contributed to such a miserable childhood for me that I can never be around her without feeling resentment. I have nothing to do with her today. How was growing up? Were you only around kids of other KKK families? Did you have a secret friendship with a black kid? And my favorite. Do you want to have your parents' DNA tested to see if they have non-white genes in them? My parents never would let me leave the house except to go to church and clan meetings. As for my parents, my mum has kind of had a change of heart. I still have nothing to do with her, but she is no longer a KKK member either. My dad is still heavily into it. It would matter if he was tested, because it's not like facts are gonna change his mind. Have you ever thought about starting a recovery group for ex-members? Maybe call it OKKK? I haven't thought about it. Those who leave usually aren't traumatized when they leave. They just acknowledge that they were wrong and move on with life. But that still wouldn't be a bad idea. Did you consider yourself racist or it was the norm? Are you attracted to other races? I mainly am attracted to white women, but there are exceptions to other races. When I was actively in the KKK, my experience with being attracted to a person of another race was similar to a gay person who denies it to themselves. I found them attractive, but didn't want to, so I denied it to myself. Eventually I justified it by saying, okay, I can't help who I am attracted to, but I can help whether or not I act upon these feelings, which is what a lot of gay Christians do. I didn't think I was a racist. I justified it by saying I'm not racist, because I don't hate other races, I just think we a nation should consist of one race. I have never had hard feelings towards people of other races even when I was in the KKK. Perhaps I was a little more logical than my at the time fellow Klansmen. Not that that is saying much to be more logical than a KKK member.